Which is what if Fem Naruto was loved and trained by Shisui Uchiha. Part 1. Naruto Uzumaki was quite used to the oddities that life had to offer. She was a 10-year-old orphan, having to pay her own bills, living in a village full of ninja. Needless to say, there was very little in the world that could actually surprise her. Yet when a dark-haired teenager broke into her apartment in the middle of the night all covered in blood, she couldn't help the scream that spilled out. With her hands gripping a kunai as hard as she could, she cried out, "Who are you and what are you doing in my apartment?" The boy, who was lying on her couch fast asleep, opened one eye. "You're not Genma," he stated with a groggy voice. Naruto gripped her kunai even harder. "I asked, who are you? Why are you in my apartment? How did you get in? And who in Kami's name is Genma?" The stranger, realizing that he didn't exactly recognize his surroundings, finally opened up his eyes, and sat up on the couch. "And who are you exactly?" "This is my apartment. You answer me first," Naruto screeched. The pale ninja, Naruto could tell that he was won by the headband that was lying on the floor by his feet, answered her, "Shisui Uchiha, at your service my lady." The Uzumaki slightly lowered her weapon. "Any relation to that Tem Sasuke?" Shisui chuckled, before placing his hand on his ribs in pain. "He's my little cousin." "That still doesn't explain why you broke into my apartment," Naruto stated, slightly warming up to the boy who was in such obvious pain. The Uchiha groaned once more. "I just got back from a mission, needed a place to crash. I usually stay at Genma's, who lives somewhere in this building, after particularly long missions, since his place is much closer to the Hokage building than the Uchiha compound. Looks like this time, I accidentally climbed the wrong window. My bad. Though in my defense, I was quite delirious with pain." Genma. Around 6 feet tall, longish brown hair, unhealthy oral fixation with Sanbon. Shisui let out a laugh at the description. How the heck did a 10-year-old know what an oral fixation was? She was getting more interesting by the second. "That would be him." Naruto nodded. "He used to live in the apartment above mine. Moved out about 3 months ago to live with his green freak of a boy toy across town." Shisui laughed again, letting tears run down. "That would be Maida guy. They were part of the same Genin squad." Naruto shrugged. "Whatever, the guy's a freak. If Genma is your friend, how come you didn't know that he moved out?" "It's sort of been a while." The Uchiha shrugged. "It's been a really long mission." Naruto wondered if Genin were even allowed to be on a mission for that long. The teen in front of her looked 15 at most, so there was no way he was a higher rank than that. She, despite her original bout of anger, was never one to hold a grudge, especially against those that were hurt. So with a sigh, she placed down her kunai and commanded, "Take off your shirt." The Uchiha lifted an eyebrow in surprise. "Excuse me. I mean, I know I'm attractive and all, but even I'm not used to academy girls propositioning me." Naruto blushed, before going into the kitchen and fumbling around in her cabinets. "Shut up before I change my mind. I learned a little first aid from this girl and her pet pig when I was younger. Your ribs are obviously broken, and you're bleeding all over my couch." "I like that couch." Shisui smirked. "And you expect me to put my trust in a girl who hasn't even graduated the academy yet? Well, I trusted a random teenage boy to not kill me the second I put down my weapon. Anyway, you can either let me help you, or you can leave." "Touché, my lady. Touché." As Naruto dragged the oversized first aid kit, she wondered, "Wait. Why didn't you just go to the hospital? Hospitals freak me out. They're usually too busy inspecting my eyes to heal my body. Plus, Genma usually patches me up. I didn't exactly expect for him to move out when I was gone." While Naruto didn't exactly know what the boy meant by inspecting his eyes, she sympathized. She hated hospitals with a passion too. Digging out rubbing alcohol and the rest of her suturing supplies, she asked, "Are you going to take off your shirt or not? I don't know how I feel about undressing in front of a girl whose name I don't even know." Naruto sighed. "It's Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. It's a pleasure to meet you, Naruto Uzumaki." Shisui wasn't quite expecting to be patched up by a blonde child whose apartment he broke into. In fact, at first, he was quite surprised that the girl apparently lived on her own and was trusting enough to attempt to help an injured shinobi. But then she told him her name, and it was all cleared up. The Jonin remembered the fight against the Kyuubi quite well, yet this was the first time he met its container. He bared no ill will towards the girl, unlike many of the ninja his age. Yet most children his age were still genin, maybe a few were chunin, while Shisui was a seasoned jonin. He had graduated the academy at the age of 4, as the youngest active ninja during the Third Shinobi War. By the time of the Kyuubi attack, the Uchiha was a seasoned veteran, and experienced enough to not hold prejudices against a girl who knew nothing of the attack. He wished his peers felt the same. Alas, Shisui had come to the revelation that anybody under Jonin was just an idiot and shouldn't be taken seriously. Turning his attention back to the blonde, he noticed that a faint blush colored her cheeks as she worked to sew up the large gash that spread diagonally across his chest. He resisted the urge to chuckle, knowing quite well his appeal with women. He's had fangirls for as long as he can remember, and even those with the strongest of wills wouldn't be left unaffected by being in such close proximity to him while he was shirtless. The proof lay with that Chunin girl Kurenai, and her obvious reaction to Shisui's attractiveness while on an undercover mission with him at a hot springs. Shisui chuckled at the memory, good times. The Uzumaki was quite adept at first aid, he noticed. She sutured his wounds professionally, before bandaging them, and moving on to wrapping his ribs. Her teacher must have been quite the medic. How did you get so injured? She asked tentatively, interrupting the teenager's musing. She was biting down on her lower lip as she worked, wincing each time she made a stitch. The wound looked incredibly painful, as did the suturing she was doing, yet the Uchiha didn't even flinch. Was this what it meant to be a ninja? I was tracking down a ninja across the Iowa border. He answered. He was an old enemy of mine during the Third Shinobi War, and recently attacked a group of our Chunin who were out on a reconnaissance mission. He got lucky with his sword when I wasn't paying attention. Naruto's eyes widened, her hands stopping in surprise. You were in the Third Shinobi War. But you look so young. I'm 15, he answered truthfully. There was no way you were part of the war. I bet you're just lying to make yourself seem cool. You probably injured yourself in a spar against some genin. Naruto reasoned, her hands going back to wrapping the binds across his chest. But it's true. I'm really a jonin. I graduated the academy when I was 4, even earning the moniker Shunshin no Shisui. They say I'm a shoo-in to be the next Hokage. He replied with a self-satisfied smirk. Nope. Sorry, don't believe you. Anyways, I'm all done with you. Now get out of my apartment. Naruto commanded, putting away her supplies. Shisui's smirk quickly morphed into a frown, but I'm so tired. Look at all the blood I lost. He whined, throwing her the puppy dog eyes for good measure. Naruto groaned in exasperation. Fine. You can sleep here this one time. But you better be gone before I wake up. Shisui saluted his blonde nurse. Yes, my lady. Thank you ever so much for your kindness. Naruto sighed. You are such a dork. The next morning, Naruto was half expecting to walk into the living room to find a much too energetic to possibly be a real Uchiha teen sleeping soundly on her couch. Instead, everything was as neat and clean as she left it the night previous, before the dark-haired boy's timely break-in. In fact, Naruto would have easily convinced herself that it was all a weird dream, if it wasn't for the fact that on her table was a little note. Hey Naru-chan. Thanks for being the coolest nurse and most understanding victim of a break-in ever. I appreciate it. As promised, I left before you could even wake up. I also took one of your ramen cups. Hope you don't mind. Till next time. Shunshin no Shisui winking face. He took one of Naruto's ramen cups. He took one of Naruto's ramen cups. The young, lying Uchiha better pray there was no next time, because Naruto was going to kill him. That day at the academy, things were back to normal, somewhat. Iruka still lectured about boring topics, Naruto and Shikamaru still took turns napping and waking each other up when they were called on, but today, Naruto was staring at her eternal rival, Sasuke Uchiha. Thankfully, Nobody other than Shikamaru noticed, but he notices everything. By the time the bell rang for lunch, Naruto couldn't help her curiosity anymore. So with a sigh, she made her way over to Sasuke, who was much too busy ignoring Ino and Sakura's fight to even notice her approaching. "Hey Tem, I have a question for you. What do you want, Dobi?" Naruto shuffled a bit on her feet nervously. "Well, you're a Uchiha, right?" "Obviously. Well, I sort of heard some old ladies at the market talking about the Third Shinobi War, and how Shunshin no Shisui played a pretty big role in it. From what I gathered, he's a Uchiha. So I was just wondering if all the rumors are true." Sasuke stared at the blonde. "And what rumors are you referring to exactly?" "That Shisui is only 15 and already a Jonin," she replied, nervous because she should have known that the idiot who mistook her apartment for his friend's would have lied to her. "It's true. Shisui made Genin at the age of 4, the youngest to participate in the war. He's known as Shunshin no Shisui because of his mastery over the body flicker technique." The Tem confirmed. Naruto's jaw dropped, her eyes widening. "You mean it's true?" Sasuke smirked. "And just why are you so interested in my cousin? Do you have a crush on him or something?" The Uzumaki blushed. "No. I was just wondering, I mean, it sounds so unbelievable." Sasuke scoffed. "Unbelievable to a dobi like you maybe, but Shisui is a Uchiha. And Uchihas are obviously superior." Naruto just frowned, walking away in a huff as she muttered something about those bastard Uchihas. Shisui laughed as he watched his best friend Itachi train his younger brother Sasuke. The eldest Uchiha was put onto forced medical leave by the Hokage, who demanded that Shisui take the next month to recuperate before going back on missions. Unfortunately, this ban included training. So the injured Jonin suddenly found himself with quite a lot of free time, and he decided to spend it watching Itachi beat the young Sasuke into the ground. "You have to watch your footing." Sasuke nodded as he rose from the ground. "Yes, brother." Shisui laughed again. "Hey Sasuke, how are you handling those fangirls in the academy?" Sasuke fought back a blush, letting out a groan of irritation. "They still won't leave me alone. Despite me making it abundantly clear that I can't stand them. Though I would be more worried for you, dear cousin, it seems like you are gaining a fangirl at the academy yourself." The youngest Uchiha teased. Itachi raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about? This girl in my class was asking about you today. Claimed that she was curious about how such a young guy made Jonin. I think she just has a crush on you." Sasuke replied. Shisui bit back a smile. "And just who may this girl be?" "Naruto Uzumaki." This time, there was absolutely no way for the seasoned veteran to cover up the laugh that burst out. Naruto Uzumaki was used to handling her finances. She has been doing so since the age of 6. So as she poured over this month's rent and utilities bill, she knew that there was something incredibly wrong with it. With a huff, she grasped her bills, and made her way down 3 stories, where her landlord lived. Banging on the door in anger, Naruto waited until the crotchety old bag opened up. "What?" her landlord hissed. The Uzumaki shoved the bill to her face. "What is the meaning of this? The rent is almost double than what it usually is." The old bag smiled cruelly. "According to the agreement signed when you moved in, I can change the prices of rent as needed, as long as it is still held within a certain range. Now, can you afford it, or should I call you some movers?" Naruto growled. "I can afford it. You haven't gotten rid of me just yet." The Uzumaki left, stomping back to her apartment in anger. She was 10. The only money she had was what she received from the Konoha Orphans Fund, and there was no way to ask for more money since the amount given is the same for every orphan. With this new rent price, she could probably afford another 3 months of rent given her substantial savings. But after those 3 months, she would have to move. But Naruto was stubborn. Oh, so very stubborn. She would not let the old bat win. She had lived in that apartment for the last 4 years, it was her home, damn it. Naruto Uzumaki would not be giving up her home anytime soon. If Anko thought there was something weird about a 10-year-old blonde Jinchuriki approaching her at the dango stand, she didn't let it show. Instead, Enko made the girl pay for her next round of dango before she could even talk to her. Eating her paid for dango, she turned to face the blonde. So what do you want, brat? I'm looking for someone, Naruto stated. Enko raised a brow, and why are you asking me? He's a jonin too. I assume you'll have a better idea of his whereabouts than some random civilian off the streets. The Uzumaki reasoned. So who exactly are you looking for? He goes by Shunshin no Shisui. Tall, pale skin, dark hair, weirdly talkative for a Uchiha. Enko chuckled, I know the kid. But what does an academy student like you want with an elite jonin? I have a question to ask him. Naruto confessed shyly. The purple-haired jonin smirked. Ah, you want to ask him on a date? The blonde blushed fiercely, exclaiming, no. Why does everybody think that? Enko laughed. Word around town the kid's on medical leave. Apparently he was injured during his last long-term mission. He can usually be found at the abandoned training field near the river. Now scram brat, you're ruining my dango time. Naruto, who had a keen sense of self-preservation, ran away before the crazy snake lady decided to use her as target practice. Itachi and Sasuke had already gone home for supper by the time Naruto came upon the clearing. She found the strange Uchiha leaning back on a tree, reading a thick book. Hearing her approach, Shisui looked up with a grin. Well, if it isn't my favorite Uzumaki. Let me guess, you missed me. Naruto scoffed, not a chance. No, I have a proposition for you. Shisui closed his book as he looked at the blonde in intrigue. A proposition, you say? Are you sure you don't have a crush on me? Sasuke certainly thought so. Naruto went red in frustration. That damn Tem. Yes, I'm sure. Shisui laughed in amusement. Ah, pure denial. How did you even find me anyways? I bought the crazy snake lady some dango. Shisui nodded. Well, that explains it. He was quite good friends with Enko, and he knew for a fact that she would sell him out for a free plate of dango. Anyways, I have a problem. My stupid landlady decided that she was sick of me once and for all and has decided to get rid of me by raising the price of my rent to almost double the original amount. I can't exactly afford that, not for long anyways. And there's no way I'm going to let her kick me out of my own home. So I have a solution. And what exactly does this have to do with me? I need a roommate to help cover expenses. Now that Genma moved across town, you need a place to crash after missions that's close by to the Hokage Tower, with someone well versed enough in first aid to help patch you up. It's a win-win situation. Shisui raised an eyebrow in surprise. You want me to move in with you? Not move in with me. You live in the Uchiha compound. But wouldn't it be nice to have a convenient place to stay after long missions? It's not like you can't afford it, mister. I've been a jonin since before your birth. Technically, I didn't make jonin until you were 3. I was only a chunin at your birth. You see my point. Do we have a deal or not? Naruto asked, exasperated. The Uchiha was such a pain to deal with. But Naruto was desperate. Shisui smirked, shaking the younger girl's hand. You have a deal, Naru-chan. Don't call me that. Why not? We are roommates after all. Though I'm still convinced you did all of this because of your enormous crush on me. Naruto once more turned red. Listen here, Uchiha, and get it through your enormously thick skull. I have never, will never ever have a crush on you. Itachi Uchiha was quite certain that his best friend was an idiot. It didn't matter that said best friend was older, of a technically higher rank, and was already killing enemy ninja while Itachi was still in diapers. Shisui was an idiot. The idiot, as Itachi now referred to him in his head, was on medical leave. This meant that the ninja, who had just come back from a 5-month-long mission, was injured, and was supposed to be resting. Keyword being supposed. Instead, the idiot was prancing along the training field in a multitude and weird mixture of different taijutsu's forms that definitely didn't belong to the Uchiha. Itachi noticed a few moves stolen from the Hyugas, a couple jabs stolen from Meidagai, and even a few foreign moves that he had trouble recognizing. Shisui Uchiha was an idiot, but also kind of a genius. But despite his taijutsu prowess, the idiot just didn't know when to rest. He had a kami-like level of pain tolerance, and he used it in order to just ignore the obvious signs that he should stop training. At this rate, the idiot was going to cripple himself by the time his forced medical leave was over. So Itachi did what Itachi had to do. He told on him. The third Hokage was not happy to hear that one of his best ninjas, and hopefully successor, wasn't taking care of his health. The boy sustained multiple injuries during his last mission, and not just the surface wounds. Multiple broken bones not healed correctly, and what Sarutobi suspected was a concussion. He couldn't force the boy to go to the hospital, especially since the very next morning after his return, his wounds were all mysteriously stitched up, and his broken ribs set and wrapped. He couldn't even force him to stop training. What the Hokage could do, however, was give the boy busy work. Something so menial and exhausting, that training would be the very last thing on his mind. Shisui, despite his petulance, was a man of his word. The very next day after making the agreement with a certain blonde, he turned up at her, sorry there, apartment to give her his share of this month's rent. Obviously, because he was a Jonin and it was an unwritten law of Konoha that every Jonin had their own oddities, he couldn't come in through the door. Oh no, that would be too normal. Instead he climbed through the window, much like he had 2 nights previous. Naruto, who was lounging on her couch reading a book on pranking, yelped loudly in surprise as the dark-haired teen launched himself through the window. She placed a hand over her heart in shock. Why don't you just use the door? Shisui chuckled as he plopped down next to her. You haven't given me the key yet. Naruto's eyes narrowed in suspicion, so why didn't you just knock? Shisui leaned back on his hands, placing his feet up on the table. Now where's the fun in that? You're injured, aren't you supposed to be resting? The Uchiha grumbled. Why does everybody keep saying that? First Itachi, now you. Naruto tilted her head to the side, a movement that Shisui found absolutely adorable coming from the little girl. Who's Itachi? My best friend, he's a year younger than me and in the ANBU. Apparently, he's convinced I'm overworking myself. Which is ridiculous, I think I know when I've been overworked. Shisui scoffed. Naruto sighed. You know, for a legendary Jonin, you're kind of an idiot. You're just going to hurt yourself even more. Shisui patted the girl's head condescendingly. Sweetie, when you reach my level of skill, you know how to train without straining yourself. Naruto fumed in anger. It's not even worth it. Now why are you here? The Uchiha grinned, which is a look that looked very off on the face of a Uchiha. Well Naru-chan, I live here too. I'm just dropping off my half of the rent, as promised. He said, passing the girl a wad of bills. Naruto took the money, counting them with a speed that rivaled professional accountants. It's all here. You're really gonna help me? She asked incredulously, her jaw dropping. Shisui smiled. I'm a man of my word Naru-chan. Plus, we're helping each other. I need a place to sleep when I come off long missions, and more importantly, a person I trust to heal me when I'm injured. Naruto gaped. You trust me? I'm moving in with you, aren't I? Plus, the other night you healed me with no alternative motives. Me, a stranger who broke into your apartment in the middle of the night. Of course I trust you. The Uzumaki blinked away the tears that threatened to fall. She never had someone trust her before. Sure, the Hokage and Iruka liked her well enough, but they didn't exactly trust her. She was sort of friends with Shikamaru, who trusted her to wake him up when Iruka-sensei asked a question, but this was different. Shisui was trusting her with his health, his secrets, and in essence, his life. Naruto wouldn't let that trust go in vain, despite him being annoying as hell. I trust you too Shisui. She stated softly, smiling. Shisui grinned once more. Plus, it's nice to have somewhere to run away to when I want no one to find me. The Uchiha compound, while huge, is much too easy to find. This way, I have a place where no one will even think to look for me. Other than me of course. Other than you of course. He agreed, but then again, I don't really mind you all that much. Despite being just an academy student. Naruto glared at her new roommate. I'm more than just an academy student you know. Well of course. You're also an adorable little blonde. Boys will be all over you in a few years. Naruto blushed, perhaps in anger. I'm not adorable. Yes, you are. I'm going to be Hokage, mark my words. Not if I get there first. Shisui was a pragmatic man. Yet he couldn't stop the slip of tongue that presented itself when faced with the leader of his village, the formidable third Hokage. Are you senile? Sarutobi watched in amusement as the young Jonin attempted to pick his jaw off the floor. Senile. Shisui blushed. I meant serious. Are you serious? The Hokage chuckled. I fear that I am quite serious. We need a replacement. You're the only one qualified enough to fill in on such short notice. Perhaps a little too qualified. Shisui muttered angrily under his breath. I'm sure you'll find some way to keep yourself entertained. Sarutobi said, passing the younger ninja the mission file. Quickly flipping through it, the Uchiha grinned, I'm sure I will. Naruto was having a pretty boring day at the academy. After Shisui stopped by earlier this morning, Naruto was able to finally pay off her old bat of a landlord. While Uchiha was amusing enough to cover her fair share of humor for the day, she felt that perhaps the day was getting to be a little too normal. Ever since the over-energetic Jonin stumbled through her window a few nights ago, Naruto's life hasn't been the same. But the Uzumaki needed some normalcy. So with that in mind she concocted a prank against her favorite teacher, Uruka-sensei. She was in the midst of planning how to set off the paintballs that she wanted to get rigged to the windows, when the door opened up. It opened to reveal a man who was definitely not Uruka, but unfortunately for Naruto, he was just as familiar. Hey class. You guys can call me Shisui-sensei. I'll be your substitute teacher while Uruka is on a mission. The dark-haired teenager introduced as he strolled into the classroom and plopped down on the desk. Whoa, you're hot, Ino declared, with a slight amount of drool dripping from her mouth. Sasuke, who was unfortunate enough to be seated in front of her that day, scooched a bit away from the mind-traveling blonde. Despite Sasuke's clear discomfort, every girl in the class was having a similar reaction, other than two. Hinata was too busy avoiding eye contact with her attractive teacher, blushing and poking her fingers together in shyness. Naruto on the other hand, was banging her head repeatedly on the table, muttering, why does Kami hate me, kill me, now? Shikamaru, who sat behind his energetic friend, shot her a look of confusion before returning to his nap. The rest of the boys in the class just looked uncomfortable, and slightly jealous of the handsome Uchiha. Why are you our sensei? Surely there are people better suited to teach us. Kiba exclaimed. Shisui smiled bitterly, well, I'm your sensei because the Hokage thought that teaching a bunch of academy kids was a better use of my time than, oh I don't know, going on an actual mission. Maybe he thought that because you're too injured to even raise your hands above your head. Naruto mumbled, her head still plastered to the desk. Of course the Jonin heard her. I'm sorry Naru-chan, would you speak up? I can't exactly hear you when your face is glued to your desk. The boy said with a grin. Naruto put her head up, glaring at her grinning roommate. Sasuke just looked between his cousin and classmate, wondering how they knew each other. Just the previous day, Naruto was asking about him. So how were they now acquainted? It seemed like Sasuke was the only person who noticed the odd exchange, as he was sitting right beside the Uzumaki, while the other girls were busy drooling, and the boys were busy glaring. But why would they have a kid teach us? Even I could take you on. Kiba boasted proudly. Both Sasuke and Naruto scoffed simultaneously, before sending each other a look of bafflement. Stop copying me Tem. Naruto bit out. You first Dobi. Sasuke replied bitterly. Shisui just smirked as he watched the exchange. Well Inuzuka, I may be a little young, but I assure you, I could probably take you on. Yeah, want to prove it? Kiba cried, standing from his seat. Before Shisui could respond, Naruto spat, sit down Kiba. That's Shunshin no Shisui. He's a strong ninja you idiot, he even has a bounty on his head. Now stop making a fool of yourself before you embarrass yourself even further. While he may be excitable for a Uchiha, he's still a vindictive bastard. Noticing the look Sasuke was giving her, she continued meekly, according to the rumors, I mean. Kiba sat down embarrassed, while Sakura questioned, wait, you really have a bounty placed on your head? Shisui couldn't help but notice the adorable speech Naruto gave, and how she neglected to mention his rank of Jonin. Huh, how interesting. The elder Uchiha chuckled, that's what they tell me. How? You're so young, Ino cried. People keep mentioning that. Because it's worth mentioning, Sakura exclaimed. Sasuke looked uncomfortable with all of the attention that his cousin was receiving from his classmates. Noticing this, Naruto slid over to his side, whispering, if it makes you feel any better, at least the girls are too busy fangirling over him to look at you. Widening his eyes in understanding, he replied, huh. That does make me feel better. Though I'll deny it if you ever mention it again. Oi, love birds. Are we too busy flirting to be paying attention to me? Shisui called out to the two rivals, his eyes sparkling in amusement. Naruto and Sasuke shot him identical glares, before muttering simultaneously, go to hell. The two once again looked at each other in bafflement, uneasy with the idea that they could actually agree on something. Shisui, of course, heard them, but he decided to be nice and let it slide, well, that's enough about me. Everybody turned to page 87. Sasuke-kun, start reading from the top. The younger Uchiha once more glared at his cousin, as Naruto burst out with laughter. Maybe having her roommate as a substitute wasn't too bad. Naruto was wrong. Shisui was the absolute worst. Not only did he pair her with his emo little cousin, he even kept making references to the two of them liking each other. Them, Naruto and Sasuke. They were way more likely to kill each other than go on a date. The only salvation was the fact that no one else in the class seemed to notice the Uchiha's over-familiarity with the blonde Uzumaki. When Naruto got home that day, she was dismayed to find that the bane of her existence had already beaten her there. Shisui was laying across the couch, reading a file containing information on all of Naruto's classmates. Hey Naru-chan, how was class today? I heard that you had a total babe substituting for you guys. He greeted with a satisfied grin. Go to hell Uchiha, Naruto muttered, making her way into her bedroom and slamming the door behind her. Shisui's chuckles could be heard from where Naruto had her head buried under all of her pillows. This was such a bad idea. Naruto's fingers trembled with trepidation. Her upper lip curled in concentration, as her eyebrows burrowed. This had to be precise. She couldn't afford to mess up, she couldn't bear to even think of the consequences. What you doin'? A loud voice asked. Naruto slipped, her fingers dropping the pork slice into the ramen bowl with an undignified plop. You idiot. I was finally about to create the perfect ramen bowl, and you messed me up. The Uzumaki screamed in what she believed to be well-justified anger. Shisui chucked nervously, scratching the back of his head, hee, oops. Naruto's eye twitched, her fingers reflexively reaching for a kunai. I am going to kill you. Ah, I love it when academy students threaten me. It's so cute. Shisui grinned, before flopping onto the couch. I cannot murder my tenant. I cannot murder my tenant. I cannot murder my tenant. Naruto muttered to herself harshly as she cleaned up the broth that spilled onto her kitchen island. So seriously, what are you doing home? I thought you had to go pull a prank on the Inuzuka. The Uchiha asked, pulling a book out of nowhere which Naruto was convinced was a Jonin-level skill, considering she has seen that one weird one-eyed Jonin do the same on multiple occasions. The orange-loving blonde sighed, resigned to her fate of constantly being bothered by a nosy Jonin. Nah, Kiba's sister is home early from her mission. I actually like her. So I'll just wait until she goes another one before I strike. Ah, Hana right. The Chunin girl. Yeah, she hangs out with crazy snake lady and weird red-eyed girl who's not a Uchiha. Shisui chuckled, you mean Anko and Kurenai. Naruto shrugged as she stuffed some more ramen in her mouth, whatever. I think my nicknames for them are more accurate. You're not wrong. Anko does summon snakes, and Kurenai, who's a master of genjutsu by the way, does have red eyes despite not being a Uchiha. Do you have any nicknames for other ninjas? Oh plenty. There's white-haired Cyclops, you know the guy who always reads porn in public. Oh, And then there's Genma's boyfriend, the creepy green freak. Shisui let out a surprised laugh. The first one's Kakashi. He's the only ninja to have graduated as young as me. Back during the Third Shinobi War, he lost an eye in battle. His teammate Obito was a Uchiha. He was crushed with a boulder, so with his dying breath he made their other teammate, a medical ninja, transfer one of his eyes into Kakashi. Naruto cocked her head to the side, but why does he keep his eye covered? Does he not want to be associated with Uchihas? It's because he can't deactivate his Sharingan. Since he's not an actual Uchiha, he doesn't have the capability to do so. What's a Sharingan? Shisui's sweat dropped. He had almost forgotten that this girl was an orphan, and was probably missing a lot of basic information that most people in the village automatically learned. It's the special eye of the Uchiha clan. When activated, we can copy every move and every jutsu we see. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. You mean you have this eye? Shisui chuckled, activating his famous eyes. I do. You see, a Uchiha can first activate his eyes in battle, more specifically, in a moment where they truly fear for their lives, or are experiencing a great emotional disturbance. Naruto scooted closer to her roommate, peering into his eyes. That's amazing. It's like the ultimate cop-out. Unfortunately it's true. Our eyes do give us a sort of unfair advantage against most ninja. A lot of other ninja clans tend to be weary of us, even on missions, because we have the power to inadvertently steal their tricks. Wait, so can you just copy jutsu? Or does it work for anything? Honestly, it can be used for anything, including taijutsu. Whoa, so why doesn't every Uchiha just go around collecting awesome ninja moves? Well, for one, it's unethical. But since I don't exactly care much for ethics, let's move on to number 2. Just because I know a jutsu, doesn't mean I can replicate it. For example, let's say I copied someone's taijutsu forms. I might know it perfectly, but it doesn't mean that my body is trained enough, strong enough, fast enough, or flexible enough to actually perform it. Same thing with ninjutsu. I can memorize all of the hand signs, but if I don't have the chakra capacity or enough control, then it's useless to me. So what you're saying is that you can copy the information, but you still have to work as hard as everybody else to actually be able to produce it. Shisui grinned, happy that she was actually following along with theory most children would have difficulty comprehending. Exactly. Well, that makes sense. But why are your eyes different? The Uchiha's eyes widened. What do you mean? Naruto shuffled a bit. Well, it's just that I've seen other Sharingan around the village. They all look more or less the same, with either 1, 2 or 3 tomo in each eye. Yours is different. Shisui bit back a curse, before reducing his eyes back to 3 tomo. Naruto. What you just saw, you have to swear to Kami, to Ramen even, that you will never tell a soul. Do you understand? It's life or death. Naruto's eyes widened. What does it mean? The Uchiha sighed. It's called the Mangekyo. To most people, it's nothing but an old Uchiha myth. The ultimate eye, unbeatable by any dojutsu. No one knows how to activate it, and no one believes that it really exists. But you have it. So it does exist. Shisui nodded. Oh, it exists. I'm just the first Uchiha in over a century to be cursed with it. What makes it any different than a regular Sharingan? It's much more powerful than any normal Sharingan. More control, better eyesight, more power. But why do you keep it a secret? Surely everybody should know that Shunshin no Shisui has such a powerful tool at his disposal. It has to stay a secret, Naru-chan. If people knew the weapon I have, they would do anything to take it from me. Naruto gulped. Even kill you. Shisui nodded. If that's what it took, yes. Who knows that you have it? Itachi was the first to know. Sasuke was next. Now you. I swear on my life, on my very honor as a ninja, that I won't tell anyone. Shisui smiled softly. Thank you, Naru-chan. These accursed eyes are a well-kept secret of my clan. If anyone outside of it had to find out, I'm glad it's you. How did you activate it? She asked, worried that she's stepping over some boundary. I watched my best friend die. 20 minutes later, Shisui was feeling quite guilty for not only burdening Naruto with such a horrible story of his past, but also for ruining her perfect bowl of ramen. So, in a typical Shisui way, he dragged her out of the apartment for ice cream, before making their way to Shisui's preferred training field next to the river. To lighten the tension, they went back to their original conversation. The second one you mentioned, the creepy green freak I believe you called him, is made a guy, despite his various, let's call them eccentricities, he's a master of taijutsu. A veteran of the Third Shinobi War as well. Does every Jonin in the village have some weird personality quirk that should get them hospitalized? Shisui grinned, basically, yes. Okay, what about Mini Gigi? He seems normal-ish, if you don't count the whole smoking thing. You mean Asuma, the Hokage's son? That's the one. He's lazy. Very very lazy. Like bad enough to give Inara a run for his money. Other than that, he's an incorrigible flirt. Total womanizer. Wow, the two of you must get along quite well. Naruto surmised, leaning back on the base of a tree while licking her strawberry ice cream cone. Shisui tilted his head in confusion. What makes you say that? He's an incorrigible flirt, you're an incorrigible flirt. Peas in a pod. Shisui scoffed, I am not a flirt. Nor am I a womanizer. Naruto laughed, yes you are. Am not. Or two. How can I prove it to you? Oh trust me, you'll prove it. Feel like putting your money where your mouth is. You wanna bet? With an academy student. Really? Well you're so bent on proving that I'm a flirt. Fine. If I win, you have to teach me any jutsu I want. That's fair, as long as it is one I actually know, and is safe enough for your tiny little body to handle. Fine. What do you want? If I win, which I will, you will watch me burn every single one of your orange jumpsuits. You monster. What have my precious jumpsuits ever done to you? They're an eyesore. A complete and utter eyesore. If I'm going to be spending this much time with you, I'd rather not subjugate my sensitive eyes to such an audacious color. Alright. Fine. I'm only agreeing to this because there's no way you can win. What are the terms? Shisui thought for a moment, if I flirt with any girl, you win. But if I go 2 weeks without flirting, I win. 2 weeks. That's it. Why? Afraid I'll win. Shisui teased. Not at all. This is going to be too easy. But flirting with you doesn't count. How can it not count? Because I live with you Naru-chan. If I spend all this time with you, I'm bound to flirt on accident. Because you're an incorrigible flirt. Shisui waved his hand dismissively. No Naru, it's because I'm a man. Now do we have a deal? Naruto nodded determinedly. Deal. Kurenai was confused. Scratch that, Kurenai was very confused. She was with her friends Anko and Hana at the bar where all the Chunins and Jonins gather. On the surface, everything was normal. The odd Kakashi was currently in the middle of some challenge with Maida Guy, while Genma watched amused. Anko was drinking every Jonin under the table, and Hana was attempting to pump Inoichi for information on the foreign nin that she had brought in earlier that week. Choji and Shikaku were having a silent conversation at a table by the bar, while the Uchiha boys were conversing at the counter. Now that was normal. Itachi and Shisui came to the bar often, not to drink, since both were pretty young despite being Jonin, but to socialize. Well, Itachi didn't drink, Shisui on the other hand was known to indulge. Not that anyone stopped him, the boy has been a Jonin for longer than most people here, he deserved a drink or two. The point is, the two boys were always together, practically inseparable. No, this was all normal. The weird part was that Kurenai has been sitting at the bar for the last 5 minutes, and Shisui had yet to make a move on her. People had started to notice, at least Itachi had. Shisui was always quick with his famous pickup lines and innocent flirtations. Yet today, nothing. He had steadily ignored her the entire time. Okay, that's it. I have to know why you're not flirting with me. Kurenai finally asked, exasperated. The Uchihas turned to look at her, amusement coloring their pale features. She quickly turned red, embarrassed that she actually blurted it out. While Shisui was younger than her, he far outstripped her rank-wise. He was fighting in a war while she was still doing D ranks. While Shisui always did flirt with her, it was innocent, and usually just him loving to tease her. He was young, he was a tease, but he was still really attractive. Shisui leaned on his hand, sending the older Chunin a charming smile. Do you want me to flirt with you? Itachi shook his head. That counts as flirting, idiot. Shisui quickly straightened up, turning his features neutral. Right. I made a bet with someone that I wouldn't flirt with a girl for 2 weeks. You never told me who you made the bet with. Itachi noticed. That's because I don't want to. Shisui grinned, before turning back to the beautiful ninja. So, yeah, sorry. Can't flirt with you for now. Don't worry, in 2 weeks, I'll be back to making you blush with lust. Shisui assured her, flashing her a smile so wide, his dimples showed. Still flirting. Itachi deadpanned. Damn it. Shisui cried, slamming his head on the table. Maybe he was a flirt. Itachi was never more sure of anything in his life. Shisui was hiding something. Oh, it wasn't obvious or anything. After all, the older Uchiha was very good at his job, meaning he was also skilled at hiding his secrets. But Itachi was best friends with the mercurial boy for many years, and he knew when Shisui was not telling him something. It all began the week before, when Shisui, while slightly tipsy, admitted to partaking in a bet in which he could not flirt for 2 weeks. Itachi knew that his friend was friendly. In fact, Shisui was one of the most known and well-recognized ninjas in the entire village. However, this came at a price. They all knew of his deadly reputation. There was a reason as to why most believed that the young Jonin was to soon be their next Hokage. So no one was quite idiotic enough to have the audacity to, in Shisui's words, call him an incorrigible flirt. This all meant one thing. The person who initiated the bet with the prodigy was either super close to Shisui. Itachi doubted this because despite all of his so-called friends, Shisui was only truly close to Sasuke and himself, or the person was just an idiot who somehow hadn't learned the wisdom in not making a foolish bet with one of the most successful assassins in the village. Itachi was unsure as to which was more unlikely. After that night, he began to notice an odd pattern. Shisui would sleep in his own home, but would leave early in the morning, only to come home late at night. At first Itachi believed that Shisui was doing this in order to train in secret, despite the Hokage's adamant refusal. However, now the famed Anbu operative was suspicious. Has Shisui taken a lover? Naruto cursed for the 1000th time today as she threw another kunai at the stationary target. After a week of theoretical lessons, courtesy of their enigmatic substitute teacher, her class was finally able to apply their newfound knowledge on kunai practice by launching projectiles at the wooden board kept in the academy training field. Usually Naruto loved practical days. They were the one day where she could unleash all of her frustration by pounding into one of her idiotic classmates. But today, well, it's a lot to explain. The horrible day began at dawn. Naruto had woken up early in order to finally enact the prank against the Hokage that she has been planning for the last week. It was surprisingly difficult to purchase 3 flamingos in the Fire Country, but Naruto didn't let a silly thing such as illegal animal smuggling get her down. This prank was going to be epic. Obviously, because Shisui is an injured jonin with zero regard for his own ailments, he was already sitting on Naruto's couch reading a book, having come here to rest after his morning training session. While he usually slept at his place in the Uchiha compound, he tended to leave as soon as he wakes up. Apparently his aunt Makoto loved to fuss over his injuries, and Shisui wasn't about to stick around and wait for her to wake up. Fortunately, he now had a new place to hide out, thanks to one blonde Uzumaki. Refusing to acknowledge his presence, Naruto went into the kitchen to fill her bucket up with raisins and paper clips. The Uchiha closed his book, and turned his attention to the Jinchuriki. "What you doin'?" Shooting the boy a glare, the Uzumaki conceded to telling her friend at least the bare minimum, pranking the Hokage. Shisui chuckled, "Is that the best idea?" "Of course it is. How dare he saddle you with the position as an academy teacher?" Shisui's eyes widened in surprise. "You're pranking the Hokage on my behalf." Naruto fought to keep her blush down. "No, you idiot. I'm pranking the Hokage on my own behalf. Thanks to him, I spend most of my day in your presence. It's very annoying." The Uchiha fought down his chuckle. It's okay Naruto, I believe you. It was obvious that the Jonin did not, in fact, believe the young academy girl. Naruto muttered a curse, before going back to the task at hand, stupid narcissist. Shisui, having given up the pretense of reading, stood up from his position, watching Naruto over her shoulder, say, why do you have raisins and paperclips? The paperclips are for the fish. And the raisins. They are to lead the trail. Interesting, what about that can of blue paint sitting inconspicuously on the counter over there? Naruto quickly shot a look at the paint, realizing that she forgot to hide it, to paint the flamingos of course. Flamingos. Did I stutter? You do realize that flamingos are illegal to breed, right? I'm not leading a bird orgy, I'm just pulling a prank. It took all of Shisui's willpower to not burst out in laughter. Yes I see, quite an interesting prank you got there. One more question, why is Tora the cat sleeping in the sink? Naruto grinned evilly, that's the best part of the prank. Have a problem with it? Shisui raised an eyebrow conspicuously, no, carry on. Naruto laughed menacingly, taking her paint, raisins, paperclips and Tora with her. Shisui shook his head as he went back to his book. Really, it was better that he didn't know. Plausible deniability went a long way these days. Needless to say, the prank was epic. The consequences for said epic prank on the other hand, were decidedly not. The Hokage, while suitably surprised, was quite vindictive. Especially towards an academy student who had managed to embarrass him while reading his old student's prized novel. Watching the Hokage's brat of a grandson was a lot of work. The kid was only 6, and while young, made it his life mission to make Naruto's day a living nightmare. He ran everywhere, making a mess of everything he could get his grumpy little hands on. He especially seemed to love making Naruto run in circles, cleaning up his mess only to turn and find a new one. If it wasn't against everything she stood for, she would have murdered the little brat by now. However, instead, she did her duty like a good future ninja. Really, this was all Shisui's fault. He should have warned her about the repercussions. After all, he was the only role model the young girl had. Of course she would have listened to the boy if he spoke up about his concerns. Now she just had to repeat that to herself a few million times, and perhaps she would start to believe it. No regrets though, the prank was still awesome. After her adventure babysitting young Konohamaru, Naruto made her way to the academy, where Shisui was still substituting, a week after his first day. Having Shisui around as their sensei was an interesting experience. As much as Naruto hated to admit it, the Uchiha was extremely skilled, and a pretty decent instructor. To everyone else at least. While the girls all loved him, and all the guys began to respect him, Naruto and Sasuke were left as the only two who would rather kneel over in death than admit Shisui had taught them a single thing. This led to a brief alliance, as neither wanted to lose face to the idiotic Jonin. Naruto was not happy about this. She hated the Tem, and the fact that the emo bastard was her only alliance in this was enough to make Naruto want to swallow a bucket of knives. But still, Naruto survived. Barely. The academy girls seemed to get in their heads that Naruto was trying to steal the Uchiha for herself, despite the Uzumaki practically screaming that it wasn't her fault that Shisui paired the two up for some stupid assignments. Obviously, this fell on deaf ears. Sasuke, with a smirk so infuriating it was almost as bad as Shisui's, merely turned a blind eye to Naruto's suffering. The fangirls were too busy yelling at Naruto to fight over him, so he would take that as a personal victory. After getting verbally assaulted by both Ino and Sakura, Naruto was happy that the bell rang for lunchtime. She quickly made her way to the swing set, only to find it taken by the mutt and his pet dog. Kiba, you have 3 seconds to get off that swing or so help me Kami, I will kill you myself. Naruto threatened, her hand tightening its hold on a kunai. Make me, idiot. Kiba taunted, grinning at the enraged blonde. Before Naruto could so much as launch herself at him, Shisui put a hand on her shoulder. That's enough Naruto. He had it first. Naruto shot her friend a look of pure betrayal. Shisui would have winced, if, he wasn't a super cool awesome ninja. Instead he morphed his features into one of indifference, before leading Naruto into his temporary office inside the classroom. The minute they were alone, Shisui's entire countenance changed, a grin spreading across his fine features. Sorry about that, Naru-chan. You know I can't pick favorites. Plus, everyone would make fun of me if it got out that I let 2 academy students fight on my watch. Naruto shot him an incredulous look. Seriously? Sakura and Ino fight every day. Shisui chuckled nervously. Fangirls don't count, they're a breed of their own. Naruto nodded solemnly, agreeing with this nugget of wisdom. Taking a seat on top of his desk, Naruto asked, "Hey Shisui, how's the bet going? Flirt with anyone yet?" Shisui's sweat dropped. Nope. None, no flirting done by me. At all. Nope. None. Naruto narrowed her eyes in suspicion. Right. Thankfully for Shisui, the bell rung at that exact moment. Let's go Naru-chan, time for class. The rest of Naruto's classmates were already seated by the time Shisui and Naruto exited the office. Taking her previous seat between the Uchiha and the Yamanaka, Naruto couldn't help but smirk at the sight of Shisui becoming serious once more, putting up the front of a dedicated teacher. Ino, always eager for gossip, leaned towards her fellow blonde. Hey Naruto, what were you doing in Shisui-sensei's room? Naruto shot Ino a look, before schooling her features into plain boredom. Oh that. Shisui and I are lovers, he was just letting me get some extra credit. Sasuke's surprised burst of laughter on the other side of her brought a smile to Naruto's face. Oh, she knew this was going to someday come back to bite her, but Ino's slack-jawed expression and Sasuke's now silent laughter made it worth it. Unfortunately, if his narrowed eyes were any indication, Shisui heard it as well. Oh well, Naruto was nothing if not unpredictable. Really, her friend should have seen something like this coming from a mile away. This brought Naruto to her current predicament. Despite pulling 2 hilarious and successful pranks, it was still a pretty horrible day for the young girl. It was made worse by the fact that no matter what she tried, she just couldn't hit the damn targets. Naruto cursed again as her kunai missed the target entirely, instead burrowing itself neatly in a nearby tree. Shisui watched over her with a critical eye, analyzing everything from her form to her breath. He walked over to the tree, yanking out her kunai before turning it over in his hands and examining it. Oi, Shisui, what are you doing with my kunai? They cost me a fortune. Naruto exclaimed, marching over to her roommate in agitation. She thanked Kami that most academy students were much too involved in their own progress to pay attention to the dobi talking to their instructor. Shisui raised a brow. Naru-chan, where did you get this? Naruto tilted her head in confusion. What do you mean? I got it at the academy store for essentials, just like everybody else. The Uchiha felt his blood boiling while he curbed the urge to set everything ablaze. Instead, the young Uchiha plastered a grin, unhooking his own kunai holster from his leg. Here you go Naru-chan. The kunai you're using now are a little worn down, but mine are top of the line. You can keep them, I have loads at home. Naruto, for the first time since this horrid day began, grinned up at her friend. Thanks Shisui. Of course. And then, in a quieter voice, he muttered, anything for my lover. Naruto kicked him in the shins for that specific comment, blushing as Shisui just wouldn't stop laughing. As the girl turned back to her task, now finally able to hit the targets, Shisui let his grin drop. The kunai sold to Naruto were nothing but scrap metal, absolutely useless as weapons. It's no wonder she hadn't been able to hit any of the targets. Once this was all over, Shisui was going to have a nice chat with some shop owners. The Uchiha were crazy, and were put by Kami on this planet for the sole purpose of torturing Naruto with their sheer presence for all of eternity. At least, that's what Naruto declared, very loudly, when she walked into her home to find a pale-skinned raven-haired boy sitting on her couch, one who was most definitely not Shisui. The boy's eyes widened in surprise, obviously not expecting such a violent and odd response. Are you not scared that I broke in? He asked. Naruto shrugged, throwing her jacket on the table, before making her way into the kitchen to make ramen. Not really. I'm sort of used to it by now. That's disconcerting, the boy admitted, watching the girl boil water. You're telling me. Anyways, who the hell are you? Hello Naruto Uzumaki. My name is Itachi Uchiha. I'm a friend of Shisui's. He answered. Itachi, where the hell have I heard that name before? I believe you were in class with my brother. Oh, you're the Temi's brother. Naruto realized. Itachi raised an eyebrow, the Temi. Naruto nodded, yeah, your brother's a bastard. But I've come to the realization that all Uchihas are, so I guess it's not really his fault. And you are an expert on Uchiha, I presume. Well, let's see, I've only met 3 of them. Out of the 3, one enjoys calling me Doby and leaving me to get yelled at by his rabid fangirls, while the other 2 enjoy breaking into my apartment. That's pretty bastard-like, don't you think? Itachi smiled. You're the one who made a bet with Shisui about flirting. Naruto's eyes widened. He told you about that. Itachi nodded. He wanted me to know so that I could act as a reminder. How'd you figure it was me? And frankly, while we're on the subject, how the hell did you find my apartment? I traced Shisui's chakra here. He's been coming here often enough for me to pick up on it. As for how I knew you issued the bet, well, let's just say it's very rare to find someone who would so boldly challenge Shisui. Why? The guy is an idiot. Has a bunch of broken ribs and a torn torso, yet he still insists on training. Itachi was pleasantly surprised by this girl. When he first found the apartment, he was quite confused as to why his friend would spend so much time with the resident Jinchuriki. She was smarter, and quite honestly much more funny than he expected. Plus, her manner of speaking was so curt and direct. It was refreshing. As Uchihas, and elite Jonin, both boys were quite accustomed to people mincing their words in their presence. This girl just didn't care enough to do so. Ah yes, he is quite an idiot. That's why I told the Hokage about it. Naruto almost dropped her bowl in shock. You told on him. Itachi nodded with a smile. Well, of course. Shisui is my oldest friend. I wouldn't want him to get hurt. Naruto snorted. Bullshit, you just wanted to see what the Hokage would come up with as punishment. I'll admit I was curious. The Hokage has quite the imaginative mind. I was not, however, prepared for Shisui to be assigned to the academy, as Sasuke's teacher no less. Yeah, the bastard was super shocked when Shisui walked in. Almost made the whole thing worth it. Almost. I must say Naruto, I am quite confused as to how your friendship with Shisui started. I'll tell you the entire story if you want, for a price. Itachi smirked. Oh yes, he quite understood Shisui's fondness for the girl, name it. I have some questions for you about Shisui and Sasuke. I want them answered. Deal. Very well. It all started when Shisui came back from his long-term mission. By the time Naruto had finished her tale, the 2 new friends were seated at the dining room table, finishing their bowls of ramen. I must say, that is quite the story. Thank you for telling it to me. Of course. You are Shisui's lover after all. Itachi shot her a look. She was adamant in calling him that. Ever since midway through the tale, he admitted to being Shisui's closest companion. Naruto took that to mean that they are now lovers. Don't call me that. Why not? Is it because you're embarrassed? I would be too, if I were so publicly linked to Shisui. Naruto grinned. Oh, they both knew that the Uzumaki was kidding, but man was she going to milk this nickname for all it was worth. You have a very unhealthy obsession with aggravating high-ranking ninjas. It's a gift, truly. Anyways, now it's your turn. What would you like to know? My first question is pretty simple. Did Shisui already lose the bet? Itachi grinned. This was the start of a beautiful friendship. Granted, Naruto probably should have known that this was not her best idea. Here she was, covered head to toe in glue and multicolored feathers, standing sheepishly in the Hokage's office. Ah, Gigi, I can explain. She muttered nervously, scratching the back of her head. The old Hokage leveled a stare at the young Uzumaki. Well then, young Naruto, explain. The orange-loving academy student was about to open her mouth to begin her long tirade about the damn Uchihas, when she realized that she probably shouldn't tell her grandfather figure about the small itsy-bitsy fact that she technically lived with a good-looking boy 5 years older than her. Well, time to improvise. It was Anko. Yeah, that crazy snake lady cornered me. She wanted some help with pranking the Uchihas, so of course she called me, the best prankster in Konoha. Yup, that's what happened. Totally. Naruto gulped while she plastered a very large, very fake grin. Oh damn, Anko was going to kill her for this. The day started out basic enough. Naruto woke up, took a shower, got dressed, before proceeding to the kitchen to get a bite to eat. It was then, when she found 3 raven-haired boys helping themselves to her cereal. Are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me? She screeched. Hey Naru-chan. Shisui greeted with a grin. Hi Naruto. Itachi responded. Dobi. Sasuke grunted. Naruto's eyes twitched in anger. Do you have no meaning of privacy? And just what is the Tem doing here? You really have to watch your language, Naru-chan. Shisui commented. Off dumbass. I don't remember inviting any of you. Itachi swallowed his bite of cereal. Ah yes, cousin Shisui let us in. Naruto was beginning to turn red in agitation. Look, just because your lover, at this Sasuke choked on his milk, lives here, it does not mean that my apartment is welcome to the entire Uchiha clan. Tisk, does it look like the entire clan is here, Dobi? Sasuke asked, attitude laced in his voice. Okay, that's it. Before Naruto could lunge at him with a kunai, Shisui was already behind her, holding her back. Please don't kill my little cousin. He's sort of amusing at times. Shisui said with a laugh. Naruto shoved the elder boy off of her, before taking the last seat at the dining room table. Explain. Now, Itachi, as the most mature man at the table, decided to be the one to reason with the angry girl. Last week, after our meeting, Shisui was quickly able to deduct where I've been. I'm afraid I've never been able to keep anything from him. Once he realized this, he decided how much easier it would be to write up reports in peace, since now I'm aware of the fact that he has this apartment available for his use. You see, the two of us are often on the same missions together, yet very rarely do we ever find a place to write up our mission reports together where other people can eavesdrop. Such is the woes of a Jonin. Shisui interjected. Shooting a glare at her roommate, Naruto gestured for Itachi to finish. Well, once we figured this out, we then also realized how much easier it would be for us if we let Sasuke in on the secret as well. He's usually with us anyways, and he could use a place to do his studies without getting interrupted as well. The Uchiha compound is full of overbearing mothers and clingy little cousins. Naruto's eye continued to twitch. So you're telling me that my apartment has become some sort of pseudo-safe house for all of you? The 3 Uchihas shared a look, before turning to the girl and nodding as one, pretty much. Naruto banged her head against the table. How the has this become her life? Pretty soon, the boys all left her apartment, finally awarding Naruto with some peace and quiet. Her stomach started grumbling in hunger, however once she looked in her cabinets, not a trace of food could be found. Uchihas ate all of my food, I'm going to kill them. Realizing that she had to leave her house to find any type of meal, she made her way down to Ichiraku Ramen, her home away from home. On her way, she happened to pass by the dango stand, where she noticed a certain purple-haired Tokubetsu Jonin. Grinning, the young blonde practically skipped towards her. Hey crazy snake lady. Naruto greeted with a grin, as she took a seat beside her. Wielding a dango stick like a weapon, the elder woman glared at the girl. What did I tell you about calling me that brat? Naruto's sweat dropped. Not to. Anko dropped her stick of dango, returning her attention back to her meal. What do you want? To buy me more food. Not exactly. I have a proposition for you. Sorry little girl. Don't swing that way. Besides, you're a little young for me anyways. Naruto turned red. No. That's not what I meant, you psycho. I'm 10 for Kami's sake. Anko snorted. You might be 10, but you still understood my insinuations. That says a lot more about you than it does about me. I'm not the one making sexual comments towards a minor. Rigot. I forgot. You're the girl in love with Shisui. No, I'm not. Then why did you want to know the Jonin's haunts? I think you like him. Why does everybody think that? I don't like the insufferable incorrigible flirt. What are you doing here, brat? Enko finally cut the teasing. Like I said, I need your help. It makes you think I would help some academy brat. Naruto grinned evilly, because it involves seeing the Uchihas in pain and humiliation. Count me in. Before long, Naruto was due back at the academy, where Iruka-sensei had finally returned back to his post. Taking a seat next the bane of her existence, she looked around to make sure no one was listening. Thankfully, most of the students haven't shown up yet. Listen here, Tem. If you tell anyone, and I mean anyone, about me living with Shisui, I will personally make sure you will never be able to reproduce. Got it? Sasuke sneered. Oh please, as if I want to admit that the pride of the Uchihas has slumped down to living with Adobe. You didn't seem to mind this morning at breakfast, now did you? Sasuke scoffed. That's completely different. I, for one, know how to keep my personal life separate from my ninja life. Naruto fluttered her eyes coyly. Does that make me a part of your personal life? I knew that you loved me. Sasuke was happy that no one noticed him shoving Naruto out of her chair. It wouldn't have done well for his reputation if anyone saw that. However, that was tossed to the wayside regardless when Naruto retaliated by tackling him onto the floor. This is your fault, Naruto muttered as she cleaned the academy floors. My fault. I'm not the dobi who tackled an innocent onto the floor. Sasuke exclaimed, shoving his rag into the bucket of water. Innocent. You pushed me first. The Uchiha shrugged. You deserved it, dobi. Naruto resisted the urge to throttle the idiot beside her. I refuse to argue about this. I've wasted enough of my day on you Uchihas. Sasuke shot a look at the blonde. Huh. Shisui was right. You really do curse a lot. Breathe, Naruto. You cannot commit murder. You cannot commit murder. You cannot commit murder. The only thing that was getting Naruto through her day was the memory of the plan she had concocted with Anko. Oh, it was going to be glorious. Anko was amused. Anko was very amused. This blonde girl was an absolute riot. Now Anko wasn't quite certain what the young Jinchuriki's relationship was with her friend Shisui, but she was pissed at the fact that the Uchiha bastard was the first to discover this absolute gem of a future ninja. The orange-loving girl had proved herself to be just as, if not more, vindictive than Anko herself. It didn't take long for the Uzumaki to convince the older ninja about her plan, for it was practically brilliant. Anko just had to make sure that it went off without a hitch. After lugging 3 buckets of glue across the village, Naruto had taken her place just outside of the Uchiha clan compound. Now she just had to wait for her signal. It really was a good thing that she shaved some flamingo feathers from her last prank. Anko was stationed on a high branch directly above the compound, waiting for the perfect moment to attack. There was no way they could fail. Unfortunately, both girls forgot to take into account a couple things. 1. Shisui and Itachi were both of a higher rank. 2. Despite their idiocy, the Uchiha boys were accomplished ninjas. 3. Just because Shisui was injured, did not mean he still wasn't the fastest ninja in the village. And 4. The damn Sharingan. Taking these few things into consideration, perhaps they should have seen it coming that the plan completely backfired. Like completely. Anko, the backstabber, was able to get away clean. Naruto on the other hand, well, she was covered in glue and feathers being interrogated by the Hokage. Damn Uchihas. I won the bet. No you didn't. Yes I did. I was doing so well these last 2 weeks, I haven't flirted once. Naruto smiled slyly. Oh really, because according to Itachi-kun, you flirted with Kurenai just hours after making the bet. Shisui's eyebrows twitched in anger. Itachi, I wasn't flirting, I was, paying her a well-timed compliment. That's flirting you idiot. The Uchiha waved his hand dismissively, a minor slip-up, I assure you. It doesn't mean that I lost the bet. If you flirted, you lost. We have 2 very different ideas about what it means to lose. Naruto could feel herself turning red in anger. You lost. Pay up Shisui. The Jonin stared in defiance, before the corners of his mouth turned up in an evil smile. I'll concede to your victory, under one condition. The blonde student glared, before gritting her teeth and spitting out, what? Shisui smiled, his eyes closing innocently in the process. You have to refer to me as Shisui-kun. No. That's the only way. Oh, I'm sorry, perhaps I wasn't being clear. Hell no. Well, then you aren't getting your jutsu. The boy stated, flopping onto the couch. Will you please teach me a jutsu, Shisui-kun? She spat this vehemently, with obvious disdain. Yet it was enough. Perfect. Let's go to the training field, there's a long day ahead of us. Naruto was beaming, practically sprinting towards the field with an amused Uchiha strolling behind her. The older ninja was chuckling as he followed the young girl. She was a surprising addition to his life. He never saw her coming, never even imagined the weird friendship that could develop between them. Yet here they were, and frankly Shisui wouldn't trade it for anything. So what are you going to teach me, sensei? Naruto asked with a grin. Shisui chuckled, well, it all depends on what your elemental affinity is. Naruto hopped on the balls of her feet, her head tilted to the side in adorable confusion. What's an elemental affinity? Shisui's smile grew. It's the element that your body finds easier to manipulate. Everybody has at least one affinity. Some lucky ninja get 2. Even fewer, extremely rare ninjas get 3. Naruto stared at her roommate in irritation. Oh, please allow me to guess. You just happen to be one of the ninjas that have 3. Shisui grinned. Yup. What can I say, Kami loves me. Naruto rolled her eyes at the boy. Despite her apparent sarcastic remarks, she truly was astonished by how amazing Shisui was. Not only was he the youngest veteran of the Third Shinobi War, but he had so many more talents that backed up his prowess. Which was why she was unsurprised by the fact that he had 3 elemental affinities, when everybody else in the world had only 1. So wait, would I be able to use other elements that aren't my affinity? Yes, you would, but they would be much harder to control. For example, say your affinity is fire. Any jutsu that requires fire would be much easier for you to learn and use, than say its opposite element, water. That's why it's always smarter to start leaning jutsus that align with your affinity. Shisui calmly explained. Okay, so what are your affinities? Fire, wind and lightning. Hopefully your affinity is one of those 3. But don't you have the Sharingan? You probably know hundreds of jutsu. You're not wrong. Because of my position during the war, I was able to copy many different types of jutsu. And truthfully, I'm able to use every elemental type. However, it would be a lot easier to teach you if you happened to have the same affinity as me, since it comes a lot easier and I would be able to relate with any specific struggles. Awesome. How do we find out what my affinity is? Oh. I bet it's something cool like going on a spiritual journey through a frozen tundra. Or fighting a giant raccoon who holds all of the mystical answers. Shisui calmly took out a small piece of paper from his pocket. Channel your chakra into this. Raising an eyebrow in confusion, Naruto did what she was told, only to drop the paper in surprise when she sees it being cut in half. Congratulations Naru-chan, you're a wind affinity like me. Wind actually happens to be the least common affinity in the land of fire, and perhaps the most malleable. Shisui announced. What do you mean by malleable? As in you can use it in many different ways, Shisui explained. You can channel your chakra into a knife in order to cut deeper, like Asuma does. Or make a great big gust of wind to push your enemies away. You can also combine it with other elements in order to make them stronger, such as fire techniques. With each word, Naruto was getting more and more excited, practically hoping in unrestrained joy. So what are you going to teach me? Shisui smiled innocently. Today, my dear pupil, you are going to learn how to cut a leaf. Silence. What? Cutting a leaf, Naruto learned, was a lot harder than she assumed. It was so hard, in fact, that Shisui had to stop her and take her back several steps. Your chakra control is atrocious, he remarked. You have to improve it before you can even begin to think of elemental manipulation. So that was when she got stuck with tree walking. Also a lot harder than she assumed. Every time she went up a step, she got blasted right off. It was downright degrading. Her eyebrow was twitching in irritation. Shisui's laughter as he lounged on top of the tree behind her was not helping. She was wondering whether it was possible to temporarily change her affinity to fire. After all, she would like nothing better than to set both this irritating tree, and her even more irritating roommate, on fire. Shisui. What is it that I'm doing wrong exactly? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear anything. Did you say something? Shisui asked sarcastically. Fine. Oh great and wise Shisui-kun, help me, please. She spat out vehemently. Shisui grinned. Kami above, he loved irritating this girl. Well, Naru-chan, you're putting too much chakra into it. You have, well, an enormous amount of chakra. Your control sucks because of it. The tree walking exercise helps you learn how to control it. Put too much chakra into your feet and you get blasted off. Too little, and you won't stick. The easiest way is to start off running. Empty your mind, Naru-chan, let your instincts guide you. Hey Sasuke. Naruto whispered to the boy seated next to her. She had spent the entirety of the previous day trying to learn how to climb the damn tree, and she was only a quarter of the way up. She was starting to believe that this entire so-called exercise was made up by Shisui for some type of twisted and sick amusement. What dobi? He whispered back, his eyes not straying from Iruka-sensei. Do you think Shisui misses the Anbu? Naruto asked quietly. It's no secret that Shisui is recently retired from the Anbu forces. He is, after all, nationally recognized for being the youngest ninja to ever make captain. Sasuke turned his inquisitive gaze onto the blonde. What brought this on? Naruto wrung her fingers nervously. It's just that, well, I noticed Itachi-kun going on all these cool secretive missions, while Shisui is stuck staying home. You know how much he loves all that excitement, and it can't be easy to see your best friend going on all of the missions that you can't anymore. Sasuke sighed. Naruto, Shisui is still injured from his last mission. He's still not medically cleared for active duty yet. I know, but it's still not the same as Anbu. Did you know that most Anbu soldiers only stay in the forces for 5 years? 5 years maximum, I mean. After that, it really starts to deteriorate your mental state. Shisui was active for 8 whole years before the Hokage had to step in and retire his mask. Sasuke explained. Shisui was an Anbu for 8 years. She said incredulously. Whoa. No wonder her roommate was all messed up in the head. Sasuke nodded. There's a reason every ninja around respects him so much, despite the fact that he's only 15. That's insane. Do you know what sector he was stationed under? Naruto asked. In the Anbu, there were a plethora of squads and sectors one could fall under. A known example would be the torture and interrogation unit. Sasuke shook his head. It's classified. But I have my own theories. Which are? Naruto prompted. Personally, I think Shisui was a member of the assassination unit. What? Naruto and Sasuke. Detention. Again. Iruka cried. Sasuke shot a glare at the blonde, while Naruto just slammed her head on the table. Oh hell. A week passed in relative peace. Naruto had finally learned how to climb the damned tree. She celebrated by bursting into her apartment with a smile and an arm full of ramen. Dear Shisui-kun, I've done it. I have conquered the tree from hell. She exclaimed happily. Shisui, who was lounging on the couch with a folder full of papers, looked up in surprise. I'm glad to hear that, Naru-chan. Naruto halted her actions. Dropping all the ramen onto the counter, she marched up to the elite Jonin. Okay, what's up? Shisui raised a brow. What do you mean? By now you should be giving me one of your annoyingly boyish grins, with your eyes twinkling in happiness. Your eyes aren't twinkling, and I can't even see your dimples with that pathetic smile. So, what's wrong? Shisui sighed. He really was spending way too much time with the young girl. I've been medically cleared for active duty. My first mission back starts tomorrow. Naruto's eyes widened. Nervously, she asked, when? How long is the mission? 2 months. That long? But you just got back from a 5-month-long mission. She exclaimed. Naruto, trust me when I say I'm not saying this to sound narcissistic, but I'm one of the best Jonin there is. More importantly, I'm a skilled Jonin who's actually good at undercover work, unlike the rest of my peers. So yeah, I'm usually needed for long-term undercover missions. Because if I don't do them, well, there aren't many other choices the Hokage can send out. The Uchiha explained. Naruto shuffled her feet, her eyes staring firmly on the ground. I've gotten used to you here. Shisui grinned, ruffling the younger girl's hair in the process. I'll miss you too, Naru-chan. Just think of it like this, these 2 months that I'm away will give you plenty of time to master water walking. Naruto stared at the boy in confusion. What the is water walking? Okay, Uzumaki, Naruto whispered to herself, you can do this. Tentatively, the 10-year-old academy student placed one foot on the surface of the water, only to trip and fall in with a sudden splash. Damn you, Shisui. Damn you to hell, she called out, despite knowing that the older Jonin was somewhere deep in Iwa territory by now. It has been a full month since Shisui left for some top-secret undercover mission, and in that month, Naruto had yet to even begin mastering water walking. It was not from a lack of trying. After all, Naruto has been persistently attempting to learn this blasphemous form of chakra control ever since Shisui described it to her before he left. Only now she was realizing how much more difficult it is to learn something without Shisui's supervision and hints. She had taken Shisui's expertise for granted. Despite the idiotic boy being a complete insufferable pain in the neck, he was also a really good sensei. She had grown accustomed to his helpful hints hidden beneath teasing words. But she wasn't going to fail. She had promised her roommate that she would have this completely down by the time he came back, so Kami help her, she was going to do it. Sighing, Naruto cast a sorrowful glance towards the lake. It's been a full month, yet still she hadn't improved. Perhaps what she needed was some real motivation. That was when she got the idea to relocate her training to a nearby hot springs. Perhaps the threat of falling into piping hot water might force her to improve. I hate my life, Naruto muttered as she spat out the boiling hot water that had taken residence in her mouth. She had been at it for 3 whole hours, and while she had improved to the point where can place at least 1 foot on the surface, she was still far behind mastery. Before she could make another attempt, a high-pitched giggling stopped her. Glancing around nervously, Naruto was dismayed at not being able to place the source of the odd sound. Hee. There it was again. Naruto followed the laughter, only to find a man submerged inside of a bush, the only part of his body visible being his waist-long white hair, his red haori, and a large scroll strapped to his back. "Whatcha doin'?" she asked loudly, confused as to why the older man felt it necessary to bury himself in shrubbery while giggling to himself oddly. Quickly, the man exited the bush, his eyes round in panic, throwing a hand to cover the young girl's mouth. "Shish," he commanded, throwing his gaze around nervously, "I can't be caught." Naruto licked her captor's hand, grinning victoriously when the old man withdrew it in disgust. "Caught doing what?" The white-haired man sighed, running his hand down his face in annoyance. "I'm doing research for my novel." "Now shish, and let me get back to it." "You wrote a novel? What kind of novel?" Naruto asked curiously, her head tilted to the side adorably. The old man grinned as he stood up with a flourish, mysteriously taking out a book from who knows where, and throwing it to the young blonde. He must be a powerful ninja, Naruto thought. Only strong Jonin have the power to summon books from nowhere. Naruto widened her eyes when she glanced upon the orange cover. "That's not a novel. That's just porn." The author quickly ducked beneath the bush, harshly whispering through gritted teeth, "For the love of Kami, would you keep your voice down?" Naruto's sweat dropped, following his gaze behind the shrubbery to find a hot springs full of scantily clad women. "Are you spying on women?" No, the man shook his head. "Spying is such an ugly word. I'm doing research for my novel is all." "You're a pervert," she deadpanned. "No, I'm a super pervert," he exclaimed. Naruto rolled her eyes. "I swear to Kami, all powerful ninja have something seriously wrong with them." The white-haired man set his gaze on the young academy student. "How did you know I'm powerful?" "Only powerful ninja have the ability to mysteriously summon books from nowhere, so I'm assuming you're powerful." "Am I wrong?" she asked with a quirked eyebrow. "That you are not. I am the powerful Toad Mountain Sage, one of the Sennin of Konoha, the great Jiraiya." He introduced himself with an idiotic dance. Right, Naruto was starting to wonder if she had some sort of beacon that attracted weird ninjas towards her. Well, Ero Sennin, you have two choices. Either you help me master this infernal water walking, or I will scream off the top of my lungs that you're peeking on women. Are you blackmailing me? Jiraiya asked incredulously. Really, this little blonde girl sure had nerve. Yup, for sure, 100%. So will you do it? Naruto confirmed, nodding in affirmation. I'm only in town for a few days, Jiraiya admitted. I have no time to help some academy brat. Let me guess, you're too busy conducting research. Naruto mocked. What's an academy student doing learning how to water walk anyways? The Toad Sage questioned. He was only here for a few days in order to pass some information to his old sensei, but last he heard, Naruto was a below-average academy student with no dedication in improving her mediocre skills. Naruto sighed as she thought of how to answer him. She didn't know the old man, but he was strong, and more importantly, a stranger. It wouldn't hurt telling him the truth. My bastard of a roommate went on a 2-month-long mission, and before he left, he made me promise to learn water walking. It's been a month already and I haven't made any improvement. Jiraiya's eyes widened slightly. Why did his goddaughter have a roommate? Why was this roommate a ninja? Why was he male? A roommate, is training you? He asked incredulously. He was going to find this ninja, and he was going to kill him. Naruto nodded as she flipped through the orange book that Ero Sennin threw at her. He is. As annoying as he can be, he's actually a pretty decent sensei. But the fact of the matter is, I'm stuck without his guidance, and there's no way I'm going to admit defeat. So are you going to help me, or should I test just how powerful justifiably angry civilian girls could be? Jiraiya waved his hands nervously. Oh come on, there's no need for that. I'm just a poor, insanely good-looking, older man. I wasn't kidding when I said that I didn't have time to teach you how to water walk. Surely you can find it in your heart too. 5. Naruto interrupted, beginning the countdown. Oh come on brat. I gave you a free book. I'll even sign it for you. He stammered anxiously. 4. She continued, not looking the least bit affected. What else do you want, huh? A pretty doll perhaps? He continued to beg. Naruto narrowed her eyes in annoyance. 3. The Toad Sage was starting to sweat. Money. Is money what you want? 2. Okay fine. Fine. You win, you vindictive little brat. Jiraiya cried out in resignation, I'll teach you how to water walk. Naruto grinned victoriously. Great. Come on Ero Sennin, we only have a month left. Jiraiya sighed, following the young blonde who was skipping ahead. I regret this already. Shisui Uchiha cursed silently as he wrapped another bandage around his bicep. He had been undercover in Iowa for the last month, until he finally received intel on a smuggling operation that was occurring tonight. After collecting the important information, Shisui sent word to the Konoha team positioned right outside the Iowa border, letting them know that it was time to make their move. Attacking the base, the Konoha team was successful in stopping the current operation, only to uncover an even deeper smuggling network in the process. Currently, his team was camped outside of the Iowa borders, as he wrapped his wounds up tightly. He never did trust anyone else to take care of his injuries, with the exception of one blonde girl, of course. Hey Shisui, Genma called out as he exited his tent, how've you been man? Haven't seen you for the last 6 months or so. What are you talking about? I saw you at the bar with Anko and Kurenai only a few weeks ago. Shisui asked in confusion. Yeah, but you looked a little busy flirting with Kurenai, so I didn't want to interrupt. Genma teased, waggling his eyebrows. Shisui rolled his eyes. Why does everybody think that I may flirt? Because you are. His friend deadpanned. It's not even worth it. So why were you gone for so long anyways? Shisui shrugged. I was on a long-term mission, only got back a month ago. You've been in the village for an entire month. Genma asked in surprise. It was no secret that Shisui was an accomplished jonin. It was even less of a secret that he was also a workaholic, spending more time on obscure missions than he did at home. Forced medical leave, Shisui simply explained. Genma nodded, makes sense. Speaking of which, I heard you moved in with Guy a few months back. Shisui remembered. He'd actually been meaning to ask his friend about that, but Genma was a busy ninja himself. Despite only being a chunin, he was the perfect support ninja in missions such as these. Yeah, rent in the building was getting way too expensive. The landlady is kind of a bitch. Genma answered. Shisui snorted in agreement, you got that right. Genma eyed his friend suspiciously, how did you hear about that anyways? The Uchiha was famous for many reasons, his ability to keep his cool under pressure being one of the more important ones. Shrugging, he answered candidly, I tried looking for you when I got back, but one of your neighbors told me that you moved in with, and I quote, your green freak of a boy toy across town. I took that to mean that you moved in with Guy. Genma sighed, let me guess, did this neighbor also refer to me as the weird long-haired dude with an unhealthy oral fixation? Shisui refrained from laughter. Naruto was just absolutely precious. Yes, she did. I see you met Naruto. Nice girl, slightly questionable choice of language though. What do you mean by that? Shisui asked, seemingly innocently. The girl is 10, and already can curse better than any seasoned veteran I've ever seen. Seriously, I've probably only spent a total of 5 minutes in her company, and already I've learned several different curse word variations. Genma admitted. Shisui covered his laugh with a cough, sounds like she's an interesting girl. The chunin nodded, even when you don't consider the fact that she's our Jinchuriki, she's definitely a special girl. And Mon, she's going to be quite the looker when she grows up. The small smile on Shisui's face was quickly wiped off, she's 10. Well, yeah, I know, but that doesn't change the fact that in approximately 6 years from now, I'm totally going to ask her out. Shisui felt the odd need to grab his kunai. It's a good thing the girl is smart enough to not want anything to do with a guy who has an oral fixation. Genma rolled his eyes, yeah, make fun of me now, but mark my words. 6 years from now, she's going to be an absolute knockout. Jiraiya was seriously cursing the day he agreed to come back to Konoha. His goddaughter, while adorable, and precious, and a perfect mixture between his student and his favorite redhead, was an absolute pain. She had a stamina unlike any other, able to exert herself for hours more than any other regular ninja. In the month that he had been unwittingly training her, he had learned next to nothing about her mysterious roommate, but practically everything about literally anything else. He knew her favorite ramen, she enjoyed dragging him to Ichiraku ramen almost every day. He knew everything about her classmates, having to hear multiple rants such as, Temi is such a freaking idiot, and, Kami above if Ino doesn't shut up. But as annoying as he found Naruto to be, he found her even more amusing. Her anecdotes on common occurrences made him wheeze in laughter, her pranks pulled on various important clans had him wipe away tears of joy, and her sexy jutsu. Needless to say he practically bowed at her feet for that accomplishment. Which was why, at the end of the month, when Naruto was finally able to perform katas on top the water without a single ripple, he was both happy and sad. He was glad the girl had finally accomplished her goal, but he was also incredibly disappointed in the fact that he was unable to teach her for much longer. He had a job to do, the spy network doesn't run itself after all. He had spent more time than permitted already by agreeing to teach Naruto. Originally he was supposed to be out of Fire Country 3 weeks ago. However, he made a promise to his goddaughter, so he stayed until he was sure that she had perfected the task set forth by her roommate. Good job, brat. Jiraiya called out, you've finally mastered the art of water walking. Yes. Naruto cried out, running back to shore, I am a genius. Thank you, Ero Sennin. Jiraiya scratched the back of his head sheepishly, yeah, I really am a great sensei. When I said to master water walking in 2 months, a warm, sultry voice interrupted, I didn't mean that you should recruit a Sennin to help you. Jiraiya quickly turned to face the voice, surprised to see the prodigy Uchiha standing there in standard Jonin uniform, a grin spread across his face. Naruto crossed her arms in mock anger, yeah, well you're the idiot that told a 10-year-old to learn a genin skill, and then left without leaving any proper instructions. Shisui chuckled as he reached over to tussle the blonde's hair. Well, I knew how resourceful you could be. Although I must say, convincing Jiraiya-sama to teach you is certainly a surprise. Naruto blinked in confusion. Okay, I get that Ero Sennin is a powerful ninja and all, but did you just add, Sama, to his name? Oi brat. Jiraiya interrupted, how many times do I have to tell you that I'm deserving of respect? Naruto ignored the old man, returning her attentions to the Uchiha instead. He's just a pervert. A pervert he may be, Shisui admitted, ignoring Jiraiya's insulted cries, but he was also the sensei of the fourth Hokage. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. You taught the Yondaime. Jiraiya puffed out his chest narcissistically. I did. Shisui smiled suspiciously. In fact, back when I used to work with Minato-sensei's squad during the Third Shinobi War, he used to mention Jiraiya-sama quite often. Whoa, how come I never knew this? Shisui shot a look towards the younger girl, perhaps because you never pay attention during history class. Oh yeah, Naruto said sheepishly. Naruto, Jiraiya called, I want to talk to your roommate here for a minute. Here's some money, treat yourself to some ramen. Sweet. Naruto took the money before running off. See you at home, Shisui-kun. The smiles that adorned the two ninjas' faces slipped off as they regarded one another seriously. You worked under Minato during the war? Jiraiya asked. Shisui nodded, only briefly. I had an advanced Sharingan that his team needed for a few missions, so I was recruited to help. You've spent quite a bit of time with my student then. Jiraiya probed. I did. Not as much time as I spent with Kushina though. We were assigned to the same assassination squad towards the end of the war. He admitted. Jiraiya's widened in understanding. There was only one reason for Shisui to bring up Kushina, you know then. That Naruto is their daughter. I do. Minato often spoke about the tale of an utterly gutsy shinobi, so I would recognize the name, Naruto, anywhere. Besides, she even has her mother's last name. It's a wonder how nobody else seemed to put this together. Jiraiya sighed. As you know, very few people knew about the marriage between Minato and Kushina. I'm surprised that you're one of them. Shisui shrugged. Like I said, we were close. I think Kushina liked to take care of me because of my age. There weren't many 4-year-olds on the front lines of war after all. I'm sure I don't have to warn you of the dangers that would follow Naruto if word about her parentage were to get out. Shisui snorted. You forget that I was a witness of the massacre that Minato lay on Iwa. I care for Naruto, no harm will come to her as long as I'm around. Jiraiya smiled. I'm trusting you with the life and health of my goddaughter. Don't screw it up. Grasping the older man's hand, Shisui promised, I won't.